On August 27th of 1862, the residents and settlers of the area of Hutchinson, Minnesota here finished a hastily created stockade, sometimes having to rob logs and things from houses around the area. A week and a half later, they were attacked. About 400 residents took shelter in this stockade. If you left the stockade, you died. And the folks that stayed in the stockade watched the city of Hutchinson burn around them. It's an interesting story. Hope you follow along on this week's adventure for Soda Explore. Welcome along for the ride. Our story this week starts in Library Square in downtown Hutchinson, Minnesota. And in the northeast corner of the park, when you walk along the sidewalk here, there is a boulder with a plaque on it that marks the location of where the residents of this area hastily built a stockade to protect themselves from the start of the Dakota War. We're also going to bring you this week to a couple other locations that had similar events happen and built similar fortifications. By the last week of August of 1862, fear moved faster than any messenger across the Minnesota frontier. News of killings, ambushes, and abandoned farms reached Hutchinson within days. The question facing the town was no longer whether danger might come, but whether its people could build a defense before it arrived. To understand why Hutchinson Stockade was built so quickly, we need to take a step back a few days to the beginning of the Dakota War of 1862. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that larger history here because we have other videos that cover the start of the war and the conditions that led many Dakota people to believe war was their only remaining choice. I will link those videos below. For this story, the important point is how fast word of the violence spread and how quickly communities like Hutchinson realized they had to prepare. On August 17th of 1862, 4 young Dakota men who'd been hunting in Acton Township in Meeker County killed 5 settlers near what is now the Acton Monument, just south of Grove City, Minnesota. This was the first bloodshed in what became the US-Dakota War of 1862. After the killings, the men rode back toward the Dakota communities along the Minnesota River north and west of Redwood Falls that same day. Word soon reached Chief Little Crow, and news also spread to the soldiers at Fort Ridgely south of Fairfax. The next day, on August 18th, a force of 46 soldiers led by Captain John Marsh moved toward the Lower Sioux Agency. Near the Redwood Ferry, not far from present-day Morton, Minnesota, they were ambushed. 24 soldiers, including Marsh, were killed. That same day, another group of Dakota warriors attacked the Beaver Falls area in southern Renville County, killing several settlers and taking others prisoner. As news of these events spread, settlers began fleeing toward safer communities. For many Dakota people, the war grew out of starvation, broken treaty promises, and delayed or unpaid annuity payments tied to the treaties of 1851. For many settlers, however, who often did not understand the depth of those failures, the attacks appeared sudden and unprovoked. Communities such as Hutchinson, Forest City, and others across the region reacted almost immediately by organizing local defenses and building fortifications. Many residents knew that the surrounding countryside had long been part of Dakota hunting grounds and travel routes, so they feared their settlements could become targets as the conflict widened. In Hutchinson, residents formed a home guard and began building a stockade. The fortification was built from logs, in some cases taken from dismantled log houses in the area. Civilians used horse-drawn wagons to haul additional timber from nearby woods. The finished stockade stood about 8 feet high and enclosed a square roughly 100 by 100 feet. Around the outside, workers dug a trench about 3 feet deep. Along the walls, they cut firing points about 3 inches wide and spaced roughly 4 feet apart, allowing the defenders to fire outward while remaining under cover. The work was finished just in time on August 27th of 1862. I'm going to take a short break from editing the video to explain a couple things. Obviously, photos and documented video and stuff just doesn't exist from this time frame, so I'm sure you've noticed I've used some Google Gemini aided AI images and some video to help explain the story here today. I am going to show you, though, a photo of a hand-drawn sketch that was actually done by a soldier stationed in the fort at the time of the 1862 conflict. At least that's what the documentation shows. It's an interesting sketch, and the images that AI created for this video, I fed AI that sketch and a map of the city of Hutchinson at the time, and then told it to create the image of that represents the stockade in Hutchinson. And the images that you've seen here are what AI created as part of that information. It's powerful stuff, and at least it helps tell the story. But anyway, back to the story. Company B of the 10th Minnesota Infantry Regiment, commanded by Captain Richard Strout, was sent into the area to protect residents of Meeker County. On September 3rd, near Acton Township, Strout's command was ambushed by a Dakota force led by Chief Little Crow. I will show some drone footage I took last winter of the Acton Township battlefield. Today, a marker identifies the battlefield near County Road 23 and 550th Avenue in Meeker County, just west of Hope Lake. Outnumbered and fighting across open prairie, Strout's men conducted a difficult retreating skirmish south and east towards Hutchinson, eventually reaching the newly completed stockade. By the time Strout's men reached Hutchinson, the stockade had become more than a hurried construction project. It was now the town's refuge, gathering point, and last line of defense. So this is where we have to bring another community into our story, and that is Forest City, Minnesota. So while Captain Strout was battling and fighting his way towards Hutchinson, Minnesota on September 3rd, the residents of Forest City learned of that activity and created their stockade within about a day, finishing it in absolutely the nick of time, because on September 4th, Little Crow's forces attacked Forest City. Just like with Hutchinson, word of the conflict quickly spread through the whole Big Woods region. Most residents fled Forest City, leaving behind only a small group of determined settlers and local officials such as Judge Abner Comstock Smith and County Sheriff at the time J.B. Atkinson. Seeking arms from the state, local leaders secured weapons and ammunition dispatched from Governor Alexander Ramsey. Following nearby skirmishes on September 3rd, just a day before the attack on their city, they rapidly constructed the Forest City Stockade. It was built using timbers originally cut for a local church. The fort was roughly 120 feet square, featured a double row of logs planted 3 feet into the ground, and standing about 10 feet tall. Around 240 fleeing settlers and local militia members, organized as the Meeker County Volunteers under the leadership of Captain George Whitcomb, took refuge inside. Now, just a side note about this stockade is that a replica of it exists today, and for this part of our story, we can actually show some video footage of this replica. Early on the morning of September 4th, Chief Little Crow's forces, moving through the region after engagements near Acton, approached Forest City around 3 a.m. Roughly 200 to 250 Dakota warriors appeared outside the settlement. Finding the town fortified and its defenders alert, the warriors bypassed a direct suicidal charge against the log walls. Instead, they engaged in sporadic gunfire, setting fire to several outlying structures. About 6 homes and a barn belonging to local residents were burned. They also rounded up loose livestock and horses that had not been secured inside the stockade. Defenders inside the stockade returned heavy fire, repelling any attempts to breach or damage the fort. Accounts indicate that several attackers were killed, while defenders inside suffered only light casualties, with only a couple men wounded. After the attack on Forest City, Little Crow's forces moved towards Hutchinson, Minnesota, arriving near town by about 9 a.m. on that same day. Skirmishing and firefights unfolded as the Dakota encircled the fortifications. Somewhere around 300 to 400 people, including city residents, area settlers, refugees from neighboring communities, and soldiers, had taken refuge in the stockade. Like with Forest City, Little Crow's forces targeted outlying structures. They faced counterattacks from small squads of the Hutchinson Home Guard and Captain Strout's infantry. Around 4 p.m., a relief column of soldiers, including components of the 9th Minnesota Infantry and Goodhue County Mounted Rangers, marching from Glencoe and Lake Addie, was spotted by Dakota warriors. This prompted Chief Little Crow to break off the attack and retreat. While the fortified stockade itself held firm and was never breached, nearly all of the buildings outside the stockade were burned to the ground. This included structures of the Hutchinson Academy, a steam sawmill, and many local homes. Those who took refuge in the stockade were largely unharmed. Only a few men were wounded during the attack. Settlers caught outside the fortifications, however, trying to flee, were killed. Shortly after the attacks, 32 dead were accounted for. Exact figures of the Dakota casualties are difficult to verify. There are accounts that claimed 4 killed and 15 wounded. One of the only homes to survive the attack still stands today in the city of Hutchinson. It is known historically as the Harrington-Merrill House. It is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Harrington played a fundamental role in the early settlement. Restorations efforts by the city of Hutchinson and the historic Hutchinson organization have since worked to preserve this landmark. There are a couple of other communities in Meeker County that also built stockades to protect their citizens. When you're traveling along Highway 7 out west of Hutchinson, between Cedar Mills and Cosmos, on the south side of the highway there is a kind of a swampy lake called Pipe Lake. Well, on the south side of that lake, back in late 62 and 1863, there was a stockade built out of sod there. It was manned during the 1863 time frame by U.S. troops, but abandoned shortly thereafter. It never saw any action. And up in northern Meeker County, there was a stockade built of logs around part of the small town of Manannah. And there's an interesting side story there, but I think that we better return to the old camper office so I get those facts straight. Shortly after the initial outbreaks on August 17th up in Acton Township, residents of the Manannah area abandoned their homesteads and fled towards Forest City for protection. But on August 26th, the party of 11 men who had been sheltering in Forest City decided to return briefly to their properties to check on livestock and grab essential provisions and bedding. The group traveled through the area, stopping at various properties. Eventually, 4 of the men, Wilmot Mabey, Joseph Page, Philip Deck, and Linus Howe, set off ahead with a loaded wagon and a separate rig heading back towards Forest City. As the team driven by Mabey and Deck entered the homestead of Carlos Caswell, they were suddenly ambushed by a Dakota War party concealed behind a pile of lumber. Joseph Page was shot immediately. Philip Deck and Linus Howe whipped the horses forward, but they made it about 330 feet before they were overtaken and killed. Wilmot Mabey managed to drive another 600 feet further before abandoning the team and sprinting towards the river. Tragically, he was overtaken and shot as well. Today, a memorial site exists for the Manannah Massacre about a half a mile west of Manannah along the south side of County Road Highway 3. Their bodies currently rest not far away, buried in the Manannah Cemetery just north and west of the memorial. Well, thank you very much, folks, for joining us on this week's video. If you made it this far, please press the like button and subscribe to the channel. And until our next adventure, bye-bye for now.